Hey, Albert, how you doing? Good to see you. Frank's here. Frank, all I ever see is you is like cigarette smoke going above your head. I never actually see you. I recognize your office from you're up in the attic or something, but all I ever see is like cigarette smoke. There's like smoke signals going above your head. So it's good to see your face. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Vina will not be on today's call. She might be on on the back end of it. Let's see. We have a gallery view, and we do. If anybody has any questions, let's get started. Last night was a good call. No questions. Does anybody sing? Here, more people are coming on now. Hey, Kathy, how you doing? Do you know from that angle, when it's just your nose up, you look very much like Vina. When I first saw the picture, I went, oh, Vina's back on the call.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Vina will not be on today's call. So y'all will be getting correct information for the first time during this question and answer session. From the beginning to the end, you'll be getting correct information. So this is going to be a treat.
This is exciting.
This is exciting. So let's go ahead and start. Does anybody have any questions? So last night, what we were talking about is what happens as far as from the time that you get a house under contract. And the next two the next two deal schools, last night's and next Wednesday's, really go hand in hand. Because last night was about how do you determine which tool you're going to use. And we need to start the recording too. Oh, it is being recording. Thank you, Bev. Last night was about how to determine which structure you're going to go with. And next week, we're going to talk about due diligence. And that's going to be really important because there's things and steps you need to take. And most new investors miss almost all the steps because all the things you see on TV and all the different lessons you take, a lot of people are not talking about due diligence. So due diligence is very, very important. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about last night? As you are thinking about it, I'm going to start off with a comment. So you heard, we talked a little bit last night, both Vina and me, about, we touched on how we're finding our deals. And the phrase I use is Vina uses a filter. So when a seller calls in, the seller will go through a number of filters before they end up on Vina's desk. And y'all heard me say last night that I don't use any filters. I don't want any filters. I want the calls coming directly to me. And what I'm after most is address and when can we meet? Because I'm trying to get that face-to-face meeting as fast as I can. And again, Vina does it differently where she doesn't want the face-to-face meeting until she knows they're motivated, has an idea of what they want, has a good idea of what the problem is. So again, with those two techniques, who do you think does more deals in a given year? Somebody unmute and tell me. Who's able to do more deals?
Vina.
Well,
Say it again.
I
Who can do more deals?
would think Vina because she's not driving, but I think you because you said this. So I think it's you. Yes.
No,
Probably.
actually, it is Vina. Vina can do a lot more deals than I can do.
Oh,
A
okay.
lot more. Remember, I'm someone, when Kim and I, when we had our high water mark, I think it was 15 deals in 1 year. Normally we were somewhere around 10, 12, 13 deals a year. So we, and Vina is able to do that in a month or two. So Vina has it set up. And the example I use, the analogy I use is my dad's family is from South Louisiana. So they all be Cajuns. And when you see Vina fish, she has a trawler, kind of like what you saw in Forrest Gump when they had the big shrimping boat go out and it had big nets that put out behind it. That's kind of how Vina works. And I'm much more of the guy that has a little bass boat and out by myself and casting. But the thing is, when I catch 2 or 3 good bass, I'm very happy. I've got a more than enough. I got more than enough food on the plate that I can use for a while, and I just go back in. I'm done. So I want y'all to know, Venus system will allow you to do many more deals than someone working by themselves and doing it my way. That said, whose method, whose technique is cheaper? Which one costs more? Does Venus method cost more? Or does my method cost more?
Venus,
How
Yeah,
come?
Venus.
because of the overhead of
The overhead. So she has an office and she has people, and the people do not work for free. So it's very, very expensive what Vina does. So Vina has to get up every day and she has to make sure she puts, she has to get wood into the wood stove. So there's heat. She can't wait. She can't miss it. She can't be sick. She can't go down. She can't go on vacation. Well, she can for short periods of time, but she has to stay very, very active feeding the machine. And in my case, there's really no machine to feed. And so my method is much, much cheaper. So I don't do nearly as many deals as Vina does, but I don't have the overhead that she has. And if you put down our incomes, what we made off real estate investing, and she may be doing 30 or 40, maybe even 50 deals a year to my 12, my guess is if you looked at what we made, I think she'll still make in a given year more than I made net. And she would have more properties to show for it, or more flips, or whatever she did with the properties. But I would be competitive in the area of how much net we keep, because I don't have all the expenses. I had a friend of mine that this is in 2007 when we were at the peak of the market, and he had We Buy Houses franchise. What's that company called? Homevestors. They had a Homevestors franchise, and he showed me his books one day, and he was in Jacksonville, Florida, and he was making, I mean, $130,000, $120,000 a month. So that had it basically all flipping, but he was killing it. However, when I had him pull the other side of the spreadsheet, which were expenses, just his advertising budget was $85,000 a month. Forget all the other people, everything else, just the advertising, to put the signs on the bus or up on the billboards and all that. 85 grand a month to make 120. You add in all the other expenses, he was going broke and he couldn't see it. He just was looking at one side of the ledger. So when most of us get into investing, most of us will start as mom and pop investors. And then some of us will grow and we'll add in employees as we grow. And Kim and I did follow that. We did do that. So in 2006, we bought an office building, and I hired Tara as my CFO, Chief Financial Officer. So she was in charge of the books and paying the bills and the money and where everything went. And I hired a guy named Gowan Thomas, and he was my contractor. He was going to do all our rehabs, oversee them, get the jobs done, get the permits pulled, everything. I wasn't going to have to do that. I hate contracting. And so that was his job. And I brought in a girl named, what was her name, Kim, the newspaper? Kathy, was it Kathy? Kim. Never mind. She's ignoring. Who was the girl that was our marketing girl in 2006? Helped us with the newspaper? Kim Sandell. I knew it had a K in it. But a girl named Kim Sandell, and she was in charge of our marketing. And at that point in time, we also published a 28-page newspaper, a real estate investing newspaper, because we had a RIA that had about 2,400 people in it, and we published a newspaper nationwide. And then Kim, her job was strictly short sales, because short sales were really taking off then, and she became one of the best short sales in the country. And then I was in charge of the rental properties, and I was in charge of acquisitions, which was go out, door knock, structure deals, bring them in and feed them to the furnace. So we have been down the road that a lot of investors will do, where you build up the business. But one of the things we learned was the amount of expenses we had. We didn't see a great uptick in the amount of money we were making. And I was working harder, and Kim was working harder than we'd ever worked before. And you have to remember, for me and Kim, the reason why we got into investing is we sought financial freedom. That was the goal. And with our financial freedom, we wanted the ability to travel. We wanted the ability to spend more time with our family, and we wanted to be able to help people. But I didn't want to have to work, 6-7 days a week. And so when we had the business set up, these goals were being lost. I could not travel. I was not able to spend time with family. I was not able to help a lot of people because I was working 6-7 days a week. And I was back on the hamster wheel running as hard as I could. Because even when I made 2 or 3 closings in a week, in a month, that money was gone almost immediately to pay for the expenses that we'd incurred over the last 30 days. And it just seemed not to end. So after about a year, we closed that down. We just said no more of this. And we went back to where it was just me and Kim. And we did keep Tara, our office manager. So we switched her from CFO to office manager. But to this day, she's still in charge of our books. She writes the checks. She goes to the PO box and gets the mailbox money. So that's what her job is. But because of the deals we had done, and we kept a lot of our houses, Kim and I were able to achieve financial freedom fully in 2015, which is why right now we live in a motorhome and why we travel around the country as much as we do. We sought the freedom to teach, and the idea of having an organization that was buying, selling, and renting houses, there's no way you can make me take that on anymore. It's kind of like running a RIA. You can't make me run another RIA. Kim and I have a breakfast meeting we've started here in Venice, and we love our little breakfast meeting, but all you do is just show up for breakfast and you sit around a table, 20 people show up and we talk real estate. That's fun, but you don't have to plan for a meeting and projectors and hotels and all that kind of thing. So anyway, I wanted y'all to think and spend time contemplating what it is you're trying to do. Are you trying to be more of a mom and pop investor, or is your goal to have an operation that's running? And you'll know what you're supposed to do. You'll know what feels right for you. So for Kim and me, it felt right to stay mom and pop or go back to mom and pop. And with Vina, it feels right to have the organization and doing what they're doing. So we're both, this is one of the great things about Ultimate. This is one of the reasons why I absolutely adore teaching with Vina, is when we teach, you're getting 2 different perspectives. It's man, woman.
Mhm.
It's she's in a deed of trust. I'm in a deed of trust state. She's in a mortgage state. We've both been deal structuring for well over 30 years each. We both had similar teachers. We both started off making 25 written offers a week. That was our goal when we first started. Just she still has her RIA, which is one of the biggest in the country. And Kim and I founded a RIA and grew it to one of the biggest in the country. We're both good writers. We're both good teachers. We both like to travel. So there's a lot of things that we do that are in harmony with each other. But when it comes to how do you run a business, if your goal is to have a bigger organization, you want to pay attention to what she does and how she does it. And if your goal really is to be more mom and pop, you might want to watch what Kim and me do, how we run our business. Because our goal was the freedom to travel and go see things, not to be locked in somewhere. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys. Questions? Justin, you have a question? Your hand's up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking specifically about the Williams Ave second offer. So you may or may not be comfortable answering it.
Yeah, this was Vina's deal.
Yeah.
And I would much prefer, Vina's going to try to get on into this call. I don't know that she'll be able to.
Yeah.
You might want to hold that Williams question, either call her direct.
Yep.
Or wait for next Wednesday. And
Okay.
or just wait it for Ultimate, because I know that she's going to cover Williams.
Yep.
When we teach Ultimate. Okay, Justin.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, David.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Morning.
Why are you wearing a coat and a toboggan?
Well, because I'm in freezing San Diego.
You're in San Diego. What is that cold? David.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you locked up for a
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
Are you in San Diego right now? Is it that cold?
I like to be nice and snuggly. It might be 50, high 50s. Yeah.
In San Diego?
Yeah. Well, it's in the morning here too. So
Okay. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
yeah, I love your shirt, by the way.
Do you know,
I have,
do you understand the meaning behind my shirt?
I would need to look up the passage, but I can make a guess. Can you share
Matt?
with us the,
Okay, yeah, sure. So it's Matthew 7:7, and people ask me, should they door knock? And I tell them that God wants you to door knock. It's in the Bible. It's biblical.
Yeah,
Matthew
yeah.
7:7, knock and the door shall be opened.
I love it.
Matthew 7:7, God wants you to door knock.
You've got some other great shirts too. If this whole real estate thing doesn't work out for you, you have a bright future in shirt making, shirt sayings.
Yeah, I wrote one down. Jerry Fink's a friend of mine, and he may even be at Ultimate for a short period of time. And he's down here during the wintertime, but he's out of Cincinnati. And we were at, I think y'all know that we do things like scuba RIA and ski RIA. We got backpacking RIA coming up May 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that. We'll be backpacking in Virginia on the Appalachian Trail. So I do these different things, but I do scuba RIA, and Jerry Fink's a master diver. So he's one of the ones that goes with us scuba diving. And we were doing the first annual last year, and his wife called Jerry Fink Jer Bear. Now, needless to say, as soon as I heard her say Jer Bear, I designed a t-shirt for
That's a
Jerry.
t-shirt.
I know, Jer Bear. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions. Hopefully, if any of them don't seem like they'll help the whole group, then happy to have you pass or come back to them later. I have a question about marketing, but I'm going to save that for later. That may be better for Vina. How do you help a seller who's overwhelmed with their head in the sand, which I think probably describes most foreclosure people in foreclosure and certainly people in other kind of motivated situations. So when
Okay,
somebody, yeah,
So first of
clear?
all, let's go to someone particular. What you just said was someone in foreclosure. Do you understand that most of the people that we work with as investors are people who want to sell their homes, right?
right, and a foreclosure person
They do not
does not
Want to sell their house.
right.
From their
Good
point
distinction.
of view. Yeah, from their point of view, their house is being stolen from them by the bank. They're being cheated out of their house, and they're angry and they're upset, and they're trying to find some way not to have their house stolen from them. And so when I'm talking to people in foreclosure, my conversation from the get-go and all the way through is completely different than it is when I see a for sale sign in the yard, or I hear about someone thinking about selling their house. So let's say I'm door knocking, and I'm gonna come back to your question, but I want to touch on foreclosures for a second. Kim and I have always worked the foreclosures up through the end of 2015. And so every month in Georgia, the way a foreclosure works is they're sold on the courthouse steps on the first Tuesday of each month between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And so a crier gets up there, reads off whatever was in the paper, the legal section, says, I have we're going to be auctioning off Elm Street. Do I have any bids? Going once, going twice, sold. They're not there like an auctioneer of what you think like an auctioneer is supposed to be. They're just there to read it and get gone. And they have to usually go through a number of cries, and they just want to be gone. And they do 2 or 3 courthouses in one day, and they can't be late. So it's not like an auction where they're actually trying to sell the house. They just want to get it read. Anybody wants to buy it, great. If not, they move on. So anyway, on that first Tuesday of the month, that's when the person is going to lose their house. And in Georgia, there's no right of redemption. So once it's sold, that's it, it's gone. And I find, and in Georgia, they have to advertise a foreclosure for 4 consecutive weeks before the auction. We're a non-judicial foreclosure state, so it does not have to go in front of a judge. You just advertise it in the paper. So when that comes out, that's how Kim and I know who's in foreclosure. We transfer the information on the paper onto our foreclosure sheets, and then we go to each house and knock on the door. Now, the house is in bad shape or a bad neighborhood, I'm not going to stop. But if the houses look promising, then we're going to stop there. And if there's a for sale sign in the yard, if they happen to be trying to sell their house, my approach will be, I see your house is for sale. It's my normal approach. I talk to them as if there's someone trying to sell their house, because they are. I never mention the F word. Now, if there is no for sale sign, I act lost and I act confused. And I'll just sit back and say, I'm a little bit confused. I think I'm at the wrong house. A realtor friend said that this house was advertised for sale. I'm not seeing a for sale sign here. Do you have any idea who in the neighborhood it might be? I don't think it's you. I'm scratching my head. I'm turning around. I seem lost. And most of the time, they're going to give me something called the foreclosure wave, which is, no, I got it taken care of. It's handled. Thank you so much. And then I kind of have recognition to what's going on and go, oh, and I apologize and say, I'm sorry. I thought you were in the sale portion of the paper, people trying to sell their houses. You're in the other portion. I'm still not mentioning the F word. I never mention the F word. And then I just go into help mode after they've said that to me. And the help mode is, there's a million things. There's a million things I don't know anything about. I happen to know a lot about this, about your situation. And if you have any questions, if you want to know how to stop it, I have some good answers. I'll trade you a glass of sweet tea if you want to sit down at the kitchen table, and I'll be happy to tell you anything I know and help any way I can. Now, if I'm talking to a seller, 8 out of 10 sellers invite me in, so I get in all the time. But if I'm talking to somebody in foreclosure, maybe 1 in 15 will invite me in. It's not the same thing. It's not the same ratio. It's much harder to get in. It's much harder to get invited in than someone who has a for sale sign in the yard. So remember that. But I wanted y'all to hear that part of when I'm talking to them. I'm there to help because they think, almost everybody in foreclosure thinks that on the foreclosure day, what's going to happen is their house will be sold and 4 men in a truck will show up in front of their house the same day and kick their door in and move all their belongings to the curb. That's what they think is going to happen. And that's not what's going to happen. Not anything close to that. And so my job is to educate them what's going to happen on foreclosure day. And then we're going to talk about different ways a foreclosure can be stopped. And I'm going to talk to them. And maybe there's a way for them not to lose their house. Maybe that's a good idea, or maybe it's a good idea for them to move on and not keep this house because they just simply can't afford it. And I'm going to be very careful not to cross a line of giving legal advice. So I don't tell anybody that they should go declare bankruptcy. I will give them my bankruptcy attorney's name and number and say, you should go talk to him. He's going to know a lot more about bankruptcy. That might be an option for you, but I don't know if that's the right thing for you to do. Okay. So that's kind of how I'm working foreclosures. And to really sum up your question, which is how do I get their head out of the sand? Y'all heard me on these calls a number of times use the doctor analogy. And it fits here too, because a lot of times if someone, let's say they have something really bad wrong, let's say, God forbid, they have cancer. And the first thing they're going to say is, no. Or let's say, I know with my uncle, he was a bad alcoholic and the doctor said, you can't drink ever again. And, he was in denial. Yes, he could drink and he was dead weeks later. So there are some people that you cannot bring out of denial, but I try my best to paint the picture so they fully understand what's going on. And I usually do it by asking lots and lots of questions and understanding them. And if they are in denial, asking why. What aren't they seeing? What is it they don't understand? What is it that I can say? What piece of information do they need to know in order to understand their situation? And that's where the T-bar comes in and where I'm asking those hard questions. And when I'm done with the T-bar and I hand it to them, they can see where their problems are. They told me what their problems are. And that's why the right-hand side of the T-bar is so important, because I'm showing them, hey, here you are on the left-hand side with all these problems, and you can move to the right-hand side and not have any of these problems or have a lot fewer problems. Your choice. So just be honest with them. Does that help answer your question, David?
It does. Just to follow up on the T-bar, do you create that? I notice all the T-bar examples you've used in the last several weeks are good looking. Do you create those as you're talking, or do you
Yes.
make notes and then at the end of those notes you create a T-bar that you share?
No. Right from the get-go, we're sitting at the kitchen table and I'll say, I would like to be able to make some notes because all I have are my Canvas cards with me. That doesn't work. So I'm going to say, can I have a piece of paper? And I always have my pen with me. Usually you'll see it around my neck. So I just take my pen, they hand me some paper, I draw a T, usually the address at the top, usually their name, and I date it, and then current position, potential position, and I start asking questions. And a lot of times my T-bars might be 3, 4, 5 pages long. Sometimes they're half a page. It depends on each person's situation. Sometimes someone has just one problem that's really bugging them. Sometimes they have 30 problems that are bugging them. And I don't ever know the answer until I've gotten pretty much everything asked and I understand the situation as best I know how. So when I go to, just so you know, when I go to someone's door, I'm not holding a pad of paper. I mean, when you see me like this is me at a door. I'll have a pen around my neck. I have my phone in my pocket, which means I have a financial calculator, and I have my Canvas cards in my back right pocket. But you don't see me holding anything. I don't look like a salesman. There's no badges. There's no nothing. And if you were going to go yard selling today, whatever you would wear to a yard sale, wear that when you're door knocking. So if you want to be comfy, you can be comfy, my friend.
All right. Do you knock on every door and leave an offer on every house?
It depends. The answer is no, but yes. And so in Cartersville, inside my 5-mile circle, there were 9 subdivisions where I wanted rental properties. So there were 3-bedroom, 2-bath, mainly brick homes with either a carport, without carports, or 2-car garages. And those are where I wanted my rental houses. They were in non-rental neighborhoods. I didn't want to be in a rental neighborhood where there were a lot of tenants. And in those 9 neighborhoods, it took me 3 months to get around my circle. And every 3 months, in those 9 neighborhoods, I knocked on every door in those neighborhoods. And in the rest of the neighborhoods, if they're really old houses, I don't like old houses. I didn't go in there. If it was a rental area, didn't go in there. If it was low income, I didn't go in there. So that left houses like split levels or very high-end homes, that sort of thing, I would drive through, and I never find a reason to not stop at a house. Let me say that again. I never find a reason to not stop at a house. I find reasons to stop. So if I see a for sale sign in the yard, I'm going to stop. Where there's a FSBO or realtor sign, doesn't matter to me. If I see a blue tarp on the roof, I'm going to stop. If there's a construction van in the driveway and someone's doing work to the house, I'm going to stop. If there's a gutter hanging down or a tree over in the yard, I'm going to stop. If the grass is high, I'm going to stop. I'm just going to look for different reasons to stop. And every time I find a target house, if I'm getting some good information from it, I'm going to talk to the neighbors around that house to get more information.
So do you door knock? Do you walk around a neighborhood and door knock, or do you drive around looking for those opportunities, or a little of both?
In the neighborhoods where I wanted rental houses, what I normally do is I park in the middle of a block, and I get out of my car and I walk backwards down the street to the next intersection, and I cross the street and I come all the way back down the street to the intersection, and I cross over and come back to my car. And once I finish that section of the block, I get in my car and I pull to the next block. And that's how I work when I'm just straight door knocking. When I'm going through a subdivision where I'm not going to knock on every door, I drive down each street, usually only looking right. I don't look to the left, just to the right. And if I see something, I'll pull to the curb and get out of my car and go knock on that door. And I'll go through that whole subdivision driving just to see what I see.
All right, cool. Those details are really helpful. Last question, if you have time for it, is
Yeah.
do you start with why would you sell a house like this, or do you start with some questions related?
Are you talking about am I at a kitchen table or
You're at the door.
No, I never
Yeah.
start with Pete's question at the door. What I'm going to say is I have different approaches. So if I see a for sale sign, I'm going to say, my name is Bill. This is going to sound nuts, but I see your house is for sale. I'm looking for a house in this area. What you tell me about yours? And
So you start with the details of the house, and then later
Yeah,
it's why
yeah.
would you sell? Okay. got
Yeah,
it.
and I'm going to ask different questions and what's going on and what are the schools like and what's the inside like and what kind of carpet, what kind of floor, what kind of grout is in the tiles in the kitchen. And somewhere around the 5th or 6th question, the seller just looks and says, wait, would you like to see the inside? Yes, I would. And I go. And if I'm going to a house, if I'm talking to the neighbors about a certain house I'm interested in, my approach is, hi, I said, and when they come to the door, I'm pointing at the house that I'm interested in. So when they open the door, I'm pointing my hands out. And so when they look at me, they kind of look at whatever direction I'm pointing. I'm like, that house may be for sale. And my wife and I would like to own a home here. Can you tell me a little bit about the house and your neighborhood and what made you want to live here? What's this area like? Because I love your house, I love your street, I love your neighborhood, and we want to own a home here. So that's another kind of approach. If I see a blue tarp on the roof, it's going to sit back and say, you know, a friend of mine told me that someone in the neighborhood was thinking about selling and they had a blue tarp on the roof. Is this that house? So I use different approaches for different things. I don't have just one approach I use.
Love it. Thank you. I got a bunch more. I'll save them for later if we have time.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Jamie. And we now have, Jamie, you need to unmute. And just so you know, we now have 67 people on the call. And I just wanted y'all to know that Vina is going to try to be in on the very end. She had another call she had to be on. And I think she covered for me about 3 weeks ago. And so I'm going to be covering for her today. So that's what's going on. That's why Vina's not here. She's well, everything's great. Just she couldn't be at 2 places at one time. Go ahead, Jamie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. So I think my husband and I are more interested in your method rather than Vina's. Nothing wrong with either one, but we've both done businesses and know all the work involved in it. Do you strictly stick to the area where you live or within a certain a certain distance from where you live so that you're local to what you're doing? Or do you, kind of branch out into other areas? How did you determine, that aspect of it?
Okay, so I was lucky. I worked for Electrolux. I put myself through college selling vacuums door to door. And then once I graduated, I stayed with them because I could make more money doing that than anything else. And so my background of how to run a door-to-door business came from Electrolux, which was a phenomenal door knocking door-to-door business company. And one of the things I learned with Electrolux is you didn't want to be all over the place. You didn't have territories. You had to make an area your territory by giving the very best service in that area. But anybody could come to your customers and sell bags or sell another machine. You didn't have districts or areas. And so I learned how to give great service in my area. And I learned the importance of working that area over and over, kind of like in the old days when you had a milkman. The milkman used to bring milk and cheese and eggs to your door, and you knew who that was. And the Fuller Brush man who used to come by on a regular basis. But these were people I knew. The mailman today, usually you know who your mailman is. And I wanted to work like that. I want to be known in that area. So when we relocated from Cherokee County, Georgia to Bartow County, Georgia in 1999, I had to start my area over again. So I had to move to a new area, which was, okay, I'm going to be living in Adairsville, Georgia, which is in Bartow County. Adairsville at the time was a one stoplight town. It was too small to work. And so I looked at Cartersville, Georgia, which was the county seat. It had about 35,000 people. That was more than big enough. And I needed to have a central hub to my quote unquote circle. And what I did was I found the Walmart, because Walmart had built there. They built a super Walmart in Cartersville. For some reason, they had done marketing that says there's a lot of homeowners, mom and pop homeowners, people who have pickup trucks to go to work every day in this area. That's who shops at Walmart. And so Walmart had done all the marketing. And so what I did is I just took a fold out map and I put a pin where the Walmart was. And I took a piece of string that was equal to 2.5 miles. And I drew a circle around that Walmart. And that became my area. Now I had to rough out the outside to make sure I didn't leave out any subdivisions. If a subdivision was real close to just outside the area, but it was a good sized subdivision, I would bend it in and there was nothing there. I would just kind of bend the outskirts of the circle. And that became the area I worked. And to this day, I've never left that area. Now, did I do some deals in Adairsville? Yes, it's my hometown. But if someone called me up from Cherokee County where I used to live and say, hey, you knocked on my door and made me an offer 3 years ago, I'm ready to sell my house now. I may get that house under contract, but I wouldn't do the deal. I would assign the contract to a friend of mine who was there. I wasn't there. I didn't have the contacts there. And the reason why I wanted a 5 mile circle was one courthouse, one closing attorney, one roofer, one electrician, one plumber, one contractor. So everybody, they had one insurance agent, everybody was right there and in a very central tight area. And as y'all heard me say last night, when I get a phone call from a seller and I'm asking, what is your address? When can we meet? They're almost always inside my 5-mile circle. If I'm out working, I can get to their house usually within 7 minutes. Where when they're calling other investors and they're just getting voicemail, or the calls aren't being returned, or all they get is cards in the mail, they call me, they get an answer, and word of that spreads. The other thing that happened was, because it would take me about 3 months to work around the circle, and then I would just start over again, 3 months, then do it again and again and again. And after about 2 years, and it took 2 years, people started looking at me and recognized me because I'd been to their house 8 times. And they didn't know my name. They just go, hey, you're that house guy. You're that house guy. And that's how I was known, as the house guy. They didn't know my name most of the time, and some people did, but most didn't. And that also led to referrals, because I became someone you could depend on. You would see me on a regular basis. And this went back to the Fuller Brush man, or the Electrolux man, or the Kirby guy, or the milkman. You just saw him and you trusted him because you saw him on a regular basis. He showed up regular. You knew he was dependable. You knew she was dependable. That answer your question?
Yeah, so that had a lot of information in there. So do you and Kim knock together, or do you knock separately, or?
Kim's been out all this week knocking. I'm getting ready for Ultimate, so I can't go out, and she wants to find a house in Venice. So Kim's out there. In fact, she just left, and she's out there right now door knocking. So there's like a 1 mile circle in Venice where she wants to be, and she's marked it on a map. This is where, or a map's with her, but it's a very small area of Venice that she wants to be. And she's out going up and down those streets, knocking on doors, talking to people. When she sees someone walking down the street, getting out and talking to them, talking to business owners, anybody that will stop for a minute to talk to her. She's asking questions. She's finding who to go talk to, but her approach is very different from mine. And we've always worked foreclosures together. I was the one that went to the door. She would be in the passenger seat telling me where to go. I would pull in the driveway. She would shoot me the numbers, and I would get out of the car and go to the door with fresh numbers in my head. So I knew what I was looking at and when they were getting, how much they owed, that sort of thing, how old the note was. And I would do the approach and then get back in the car, and then she would tell me where to go to the next house.
Okay.
So we do it separately, but you can do it together. You cannot do it together. People do it, sometimes people like to do group canvassing. When I was teaching door knocking, I would take 60 people out at a time. So there's me with 60 people standing behind me. You can imagine what that looks like in your front yard. And 8 out of 10 sellers would invite us in, all 60 of us. It's hilarious. 8 out of 10 sellers invited us all in. And the people that were with me would say, there's no way they're going to do that. I mean, there's just no way that's going to happen. We're going to get a gun pulled on us. We're going to get killed. Never happened. Never happened.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was very helpful. Just as a side note to your door knocking, we were in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the hotel where we were staying at, they said that that's how Harbaugh found his house. It wasn't for sale. He just, when he was there scouting, he found a house that he wanted and walked up to the door and said, I'm moving here and I'd like your house. How much?
Yeah.
It's like
But
crazy.
And that's what Kim's doing right now. I really like your house. I want a house in this subdivision. I really like this subdivision. Do you know of anybody who's thinking about selling? Are you thinking about selling? I want to live here with my husband. Now, might it be a rental? Maybe. We don't say what we're going to do with the house. We just say we'd like to own a house in this neighborhood.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Joseph.
Hey, I'm mute. Oh, hey, is in your door knocking book, all these different approaches that you just kind of touched on, they're all in there different for different scenarios?
Yeah, because when I would take a group out door knocking, I had a sheet. I had a list of things I wanted to cover while I door knocked, things, lessons I wanted to teach, but I could never get more than a third of what was on that sheet.
Okay.
And the main thing I wanted people to see is that door knocking works, that people are friendly, people are kind, people will come outside and talk to you. But to do that, where do you need to stand? What do you say? What questions do you ask? How do I get someone to ask me in? Because it doesn't just happen. So
Right.
what What questions am I asking to get them to say, would you like to come in and see?
Okay, great. So all that's covered in the book. So that's,
Yeah.
all those fine details, which of course make all the difference. Okay, thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Sure. And also the T-bar and teeter-totter. So I put in there because to me, the door knocking gets me in, and then it's got to go to a teeter-totter, it goes to the T-bar. And if I don't get in, it goes to the teeter-totter. So I put those three topics together about how do I do this? How do I come up with the numbers? Where does that come from?
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Other questions?
Bill, it's Nancy.
Hey,
Hi.
Nancy.
Hi, I have a question. So I guess it's kind of more the viewpoint from Kim being a woman. You don't have any concern about just being alone and door knocking and, being invited in and like a safety concern?
None. And let me explain where this comes from. When I was 9 years old, my mother got a job selling Electrolux vacuums in Enterprise, Alabama. And my dad laughed at her and said, okay, Dot, you want a job. This is your job. If you ever quit, you've got to promise me you'll never ask me about working ever again. This was a different time, a different era. And so my mother never did quit. And so growing up from the time I was 9 years old, I would listen to my mother tell door knocking stories. And there's maybe about 3 or 4 times in her entire life, and she did it for 28 years. Did she ever feel uncomfortable in a house? And whenever she felt uncomfortable, she just left. She didn't ask permission. She said, oh, I gotta get something out of the car. And without a batting an eye, she would just turn and move. Okay. You don't ask permission. You just say, oh, I got something for you in the car, and you leave. And she'd get in her car, put in the keys, and drive away. And then she would explain it later on when she came back with my father or Mr. Todd, who was her branch manager. When she came back with somebody else in her car, so she had backup, she would say, I'm sorry, I just had a voice in my head that I thought one of my kids was hurt, and I couldn't get that out of my head. And most people understood that. With Kim, I think there's been 2, maybe 3 times, and we've done this for, we've been married since 1995, so almost come up on 30 years. And same thing, there's been 2 or 3 times that she just had a funny feeling, and I taught her to break and get out, and she did, and nothing's ever happened to her. And I have taught many women over the years how to door knock. With Electrolux, I was a branch manager, then a division manager, and I worked all across the country, and I taught many women how to door knock. And I said the same thing over and over, that if you ever had that funny feeling, but for most part, I mean, 99.9% of the time, people are good, they're kind, they're helpful, they want to help you. And it's just the opposite of what you think is going to happen. But if the hairs on your back of your neck ever stand up, if you're in the yard and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, then you don't go in the house. You sit back, see, yeah, right now is not a good time. I want my husband to see it also. Can I bring him back? Right? If you're in a house, you don't say, listen, I need to leave. You just say, let me get something out of the car and move. But that will rarely happen. And also a big believer in law of attraction. So what that means is, when I would take a group of 60 people out door knocking, when I was teaching real estate investors how to do this. So as I enter a new town I've never been into, and I'm going into a subdivision I've never been in before, and I'm gonna go door knocking this subdivision, what are all 60 people thinking what's gonna happen? What do they think is gonna happen, Nancy?
Well, I think they're probably thinking that this, the house homeowner is not going to let in 60 people.
No,
so
go worse than that. Yeah, they won't let us in, but go worse than that. Keep going. What's going to happen?
Worse than that. That maybe the homeowner will be, mad that somebody's approaching his house.
Where you get yelled at. What else is going to happen? Keep going.
I don't know. What else beside?
Oh, a gun getting pulled on me. Cops coming out where you get arrested.
Yeah, a
where
gun
you get in our face. I hear this all the time. So I'll be standing there with 60 people, and this is, we leave a McDonald's. That's where we normally met, and we went right in the subdivision. When we got all the cars parked, everybody got out and gathered around me. And almost every time I took a group out door knocking, as I gathered the 60 people around me, Either someone damn near passed out or they threw up.
Oh,
Why?
just probably getting so nervous or anxious.
I'm at the door. They're standing behind me. I'm the one at the door. And they're so nervous and so scared and so worked up. They got cotton mouths. Their knees are shaking. Their voices are shaking. It's just, and I would be like, what are you scared of? I'm the one at the door. You just have to stand there for Pete's sake. You don't have to do anything. I got this. But I knew that with that much negative energy, that many negative thoughts, that using the law of attraction of they're thinking these bad things are going to happen, that would pull toward me. And Kim will tell you, for an hour, when I first got up in the morning, I usually get up between 4 and 5. I would go outside for a walk and I would picture everybody coming to the door and being happy and laughing and coming outside and talking to us and inviting them in the house. I had to picture and attract something completely different than what all 60 people were thinking. And that was very important to me. And of all my years, I've taught door knocking since I was 18 years old. I've taken groups out door knocking. And all my time, I've never been arrested. The whole time I did real estate investing, every once in a while, a cop was called out because it was just like, who are these people? And I would just go up to the police side. I would tell the group ahead of time, when we see a cop car, let me handle it. I go up to the cop car and just say, we're looking for a house to sell. And he said, okay. And off they go. We're not soliciting. I don't have anything for sale. I'm just trying to learn about a neighborhood that I like to buy a house in. There's nothing wrong with that. And people are kind and they're nice. And when it's raining, they'll give you an umbrella. When you're hungry, they're going to make you a sandwich. If you're thirsty, they're going to give you some water. If you need to use a bathroom, they'll let you use the restroom. That's what people were like. And they were kind and they just kept coming out and nobody could believe it. No one could ever believe the results we got. Before I ever took a group out door knocking, I said, 3 things will happen today. We'll make somewhere around 10 written offers. 8 out of 10 sellers will invite us in, and we'll find 1 to 3 shadow sellers. And it didn't matter where I was. It always happened. That's what happened. And if I was lying right now, there'd be 100 people that would stalk me. And every time I said this, they'd put it up on my website or whatever they'd put it and say, Bill Cook's a fink and a liar. And, you know, I've watched him get arrested 3 times where he's full of crap or he doesn't really do what he says. But you won't find any of those posts anywhere. Everybody that's been out with me has watched. And I don't know, has anybody on this call ever been out door knocking with me? I'm curious. I have no idea. If you have, please speak up. Nope. Okay. But great question, Nancy. And
I've been out door knocking.
Who's that?
Jeff Kine.
Jeff, where are you?
Yeah. I'm good, thanks.
No, where are you? Where did we go?
I'm in Ohio.
Where in Ohio?
Northwest Ohio and Lima.
Where did you door knock with me?
Oh, no, I didn't go door knocking with you. I thought you said, I'm driving.
No.
I thought you said, have you been out door knocking?
No, I meant door knocking with me. I was looking for someone who'd been with me so that they can confirm what I'm saying, what the numbers are. It just happens over and over. But Nancy, if door knocking makes you very, very nervous and you're like, I just don't want to go do that, don't go do that. Door knocking is just one way. So you may want to use bandit signs or may want to do a mail campaign. Those things never work for me because they bored me out of my mind, and I'd rather just get out there and take action as fast as I can. And I was able to do that by getting face-to-face with sellers. So a good example is 2 days ago, Ed Taylor, a friend of mine who's here, who's also a realtor, broker, and an investor, runs the Sarasota RIA. He got a lead to a piece of property as a single family house with 2 duplexes on it. And he said, do you want to go look at this? I said, yeah, let's go. Sorry. So we went to the property and it was vacant and we didn't know very much about it. We know it was listed with a realtor, knew what it was, and I needed more information. And so the next thing Ed knows is, you know, I'm leaving him and I'm walking across the street to the neighbor's house. And Ed just kind of looked, he said, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know if you're going to get a lot of information here or not, Bill. I said, yeah, trust me. So I knocked on the neighbor's door. His name was Steve. So this is what I learned from Steve. And this is in no particular order. The mother had built this property and lived there. And then she rented out the 2 duplexes. And mainly she rented to snowbirds. She was a really good property manager. The snowbirds stayed with her year after year after year. And though they only rented the houses from somewhere around October through April, and then they would go back home, they would just leave their stuff because she wouldn't rent the houses out during the summertime because she traveled. She liked to have a good time. But she made more than enough money, sorry, renting the snowbirds to make this a very profitable thing for her. And then she passed away and her son inherited. He's a crackhead. He's a crackhead. And he filled the place full of crack addicts. And the single family house is where he lived, and that's where he dealt drugs. And the neighbor would watch all the comings and goings and call the cops. The cops would come and do surveillance from inside the neighbor's house, taking pictures of all the people coming and going from this property, and then go out as they drove away and arrest people and bust them. And the son ended up dying of a crack overdose. His sister inherited the house. That's who owns it now. She's a nurse. She's turned down 2 $500,000 offers. She wants $850,000 for the property, though that's not what the property is worth. When Ian hit back in September, that whole area, the property I was looking at, went under 1.5 feet to 2 feet of water. So therefore, all the houses, the 3 houses there, had at least 1.5 feet or 2 feet of water inside the houses. There was no utilities. Most of the people stayed. They just kind of, walked through the water that was in their house. And 2 weeks later, the power came back on and the water had gone down by this time. And they kind of cleaned up as best they could. The property is zoned where they can have 4 more duplexes on that piece of property. And in talking to Steve, one of the things I said is, well, do you know of anybody else who's thinking about selling? And he started laughing and he said, well, actually, I have a house for sale, but it's up in Wisconsin. You don't buy houses in Wisconsin, do you? And I said, actually, I do. I said, a friend of mine does. And he said, well, I have a house that I used to live in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. You probably never heard of it. And I started laughing. And I said, actually, you're gonna be surprised to know, not only have I heard of Wild Rose, that in June, we're doing RV RIA. I explained what that was. We're doing RV RIA in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. And I showed him on my calendar, we're scheduled to be there for a week. And a friend of mine would love to have a house in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. So now all that came, and there was a lot more that I'm not even touching on, but all that came from me knocking on a neighbor's door. What if I hadn't knocked on the door? I wouldn't have known any of this information. And I'm scheduled later today to go meet with the realtor and the seller in the realtor's office. And I'll put together an offer, probably a teeter-totter, or better yet, once I can do a T-bar, if she wants $850 and she's turned down $500,000 twice, I'm going to offer her $850, but with terms. But I'm going to do the T-bar first. But what if I hadn't talked to the neighbor? I wouldn't have all this information. And right now, Derek has a lead to Wisconsin to maybe go buy this guy's house. So does door knocking work? Yes. The reason why door knock is it's so effective, it's so fast, it's so cheap, it's just very quick. But again, Nancy, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you should not knock on a door. Okay. David.
I'm back.
You're back. How you doing, bud?
Doing great. Thank you for taking the time this morning. How do you manage your data when you're as you're door knocking? How do you and Kim manage your data? So you talk to somebody, you want to remember some of the stuff, you discussed, you want to perhaps have some sort of follow-up, or do you do anything? And if so, what?
Never, ever, ever, ever copy me on what I do with data. I am completely wrong. I know it's wrong. I have cost myself hundreds of thousands of dollars because I don't track anything. If I had one thing to repeat, I can go back and do again. I would create a database and hire a VA. And then with the notes I made throughout the day, give that information to a VA to put into a database where I could go back and look it up, or put on where I could send them a letter every 3 months where it goes out automatically. I would have done that, and I should do that now. And I just don't, because when I'm done with the house, I figure I'm gonna be there again in 3 months if it gets my attention. And if they're interested, they're gonna call me up. It is not the way to do this business. Follow up is a much better way. I really drop the ball when it comes to follow up. So what I do is once I've left the house, I'm done. Either they call me or they don't, and I'm always moving forward. But remember, I'm making 25 written offers a week. And so if I'm working on a deal and it falls through, I'm too busy looking forward to look backwards. The problem most investors have is they're making 3, 4, 5, 6 offers a year, and that's it. So they remember each offer, and they're trying to just force that thing to work no matter what, because that's all the offers they're making. And again, I'm making 25 written offers a week. I don't have time to look backwards. Not the best way to go, not even a good way to go. It's a terrible way to go. So don't copy me on that one, okay, David?
All right. Would you like some help on that?
No.
Everything begins like with a phone call, in your case, with a seller who answers the door. For those of us who want to take the approach, the kind of marketing approach, I know this isn't your preference, but you've been around a little bit. What have you observed as perhaps one of the better or even best, if you have one, courses, maybe a course on marketing that's as good on marketing as Creative Deal School is on deal making?
Okay, easy answer. And I'm gonna sidestep the question for 1 second. Okay, y'all know I don't coach, right? I don't mentor, I don't coach, I don't do that. But I have a lot of friends who are in the teaching business and they're very successful at investing, and they want me to market or advertise or recommend their mentoring program. And again, these are very, very good friends of mine, best friends in a lot of cases. And there's no way I'm going to go do that, because I have seen only one person with a mentoring program that I thought was worth its price and worth a damn, and that's Venus. And the reason why is she has over 30 years of deal making experience. She's 4th generation. She's run a big RIA. She's a phenomenal writer. She's a great teacher. She's in this day in and day out. She runs 2 different RIAs. She travels around the country for a list of reasons. She's the best. And so if you were to go to a golf coach or a swing coach or a dance teacher, you should try to go to the very best that's out there, not an also ran. And I think Venus is the best out there. That said, when it comes to marketing, I think she is absolutely incredible. And the results that she attains day in and day out proves this. And so she has a marketing program that she sells, and I would get her marketing program. I've never read it because it's not what I do, but I do know friends of mine that have taken it and it's changed their lives, and it works very well for them. And if anybody else on this call has a name or a number of someone who teaches marketing, put it up in the chat section so we can see it. Okay.
Thank you. I've looked on her site. I didn't see that, but I'll check in with her specifically.
When I first met Vina, which was around I got to know who she was around 2003, 2004. And we only brought in one selling speaker to our RIA. In all the years, we had it open for 14 years, and we only brought in one selling speaker, and that was Vina, I think around 2005. She was it. She was the only one we ever brought in. Now, I brought in David Tilney, I brought in Pete Fortunato, I brought in Dyke Spotterford, I brought in the friends of mine from the Jack Miller Network. They happen to teach some courses, but they didn't teach for a living. They were investors for a living. They just happened to be in town. So that's the speakers I brought in to teach. But Vina, when I first met her, was famous nationwide for her marketing course and her wholesaling course. That's what she's famous for. And now, with what she's done since 2017 and the changes she's made to the RIA, and to do the exchanging and to do the creative deal structuring and to talk about Ender status and having Enders work with starters and estate builders, she's just a phenomenal individual. But that's whose course I would recommend. Now, don't say that just because I teach with her. I teach with her because of that. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Last
Sure.
question. Wait, let's see if anyone else has their hand up. No. You talked about, or actually, I haven't seen any examples of tiered payments or tiered interest rates. That's a concept I actually hadn't considered, but just learned about the other day. Any comments on that? Is that just kind of a higher level than you've gotten into?
Higher
I'm
level,
just
higher level,
curious.
yeah.
Okay.
So in
Okay.
the fall, I teach a seminar called What Box. Now that's a very advanced deal structuring course. You heard Vina use the phrase structure stacking. That's what that course is about, because most deals I do are not just subject to, not just owner carry, not just owner finance, not just a Lonnie deal. There's a number of different tools in play to make a single deal work. So when I'm teaching What Box, that's much more advanced, but I don't sit back and during course say, here's what a subject to deal is, or here's what owner carry is. I expect people to be seasoned and experienced that show up for that course. Okay, so it's high end. So I do cover those kind of topics there. And I'm sure that Vina also covers those topics. And you'll hear us talk about stepped up interest rates a lot of time when you during the exchange meeting that she does on Fridays out of her RIAs out of Korea. And also, if you ever go to the exchanger meeting in St. Pete, that's on Thursday mornings, that's also online. But oftentimes you'll hear people do notes that have varying payments throughout the note. So it's something that's learned, that's more taught at a note course when you're learning to structure the notes.
And will you, so you won't get into that
No.
For your class? Okay. And are those the two exchanger meetings you'd recommend? Would those be at the top of the list?
Yeah. There's some type of exchanger meeting that Advanta does. That's where the custodian I use for my IRA that they do on Fridays also. Those are the main three that I go to. And then on Wednesday nights, we have the Ultimate group, those who have attended Ultimate. We just did it last night. So as soon as the deal school class that Vina and I do, as soon as that's over with, we go over to that class, which is not even a class, it's run by the graduates of Ultimate. You know, Vina and I don't own it. We don't run it. They do. And we just talk about different deal structuring. And sometimes you'll hear graduated. And I know this last week it came up where we had to make a deal work. We had to do a graduate of interest rates where it started at 2, then went to 3, then 5, then on average, it was going to be like 6.1%, but it started low and worked its way high.
That seems to make sense for high price markets. I'm in San Diego, and for those of us who are in high price markets, a lot of your examples over the last few weeks, cash flow. So one of the exits is holding, but in a high price market, I just find it challenging to get cash flow. So there's got to be another exit, and perhaps that's.
But you have to
could
be
be an
careful
important-
when you're doing graduated payments. Make sure that you don't have negative amortization going on.
Right.
Be very careful of negative amming. We saw a lot of those type of loans in 2005 and 6, where people would be able to buy a $400,000 home at 2% interest, but 3 years later it adjusted to 7.5% interest, and all of a sudden when it went up to 7, and by that time the real estate market had tanked, people just walked away from their houses, and that's what put a lot of banks under those type of notes. So be careful of negative amming.
Yeah, I haven't pitched a kind of tiered interest rate to a seller, but my theory is when they walk away from a deal, they'll remember the final interest rate, and that's what they'll tell their friends they got. And I might have the benefit of a lower interest rate in the beginning until the deal grows up a little bit.
And I wouldn't use the phrase when I'm talking to a seller, tiered interest rate. I would sit back and say, I need to start off where I'm making these payments. And then after I've been able to raise the rents for a while, I can increase those mortgage payments to you to this. And then again, once the rents have gone up some more, I can increase the payments to this. I don't use tiered interest. I don't use those fancy words that you and I can use when you're sitting down talking to a civilian.
Yeah, that's a great way to be able to explain that with a straight face. Thank you.
Yep. Jamie?
Sorry, I'm getting used to this. Do you have a recommendation for notes?
As far
Learning
as-
notes.
Learning notes are, okay, so when I was learning how to put together notes, I went to 2 basic people, and then you can throw in Pete Fortunato. But when I was learning how to structure owner financing or when I was going to become a lender, I went to Dyke Spotiford. His website is assets101.com. He just got done maybe 2 weeks ago teaching the course. And I think that course is recorded, so you may be able to get that course. But as Bill, the lender goes, my documents come from Dyke Spotiford, from that course that I've taken a number of times. It's a phenomenal course, and Dyke's documents are they're just rock solid. And because he's in Georgia and I'm in Georgia, it makes it very easy. But though I do lending and around the country, so I've got to usually go to a local attorney in that state and make sure my documents will work. So a good example is where I'm going to use a security deed in Georgia. If I'm doing a loan in Tennessee, I think I have to, go to a mortgage. And so I've got to deal with an attorney and say, this is what I need the mortgage to say and do. And they'll help me make changes to my security deed to turn it into a mortgage that will work in Tennessee. So that's first. Number two is the other person who really taught me how to make notes, sing, and dance was Jack Miller. And there's a website called cashflowdepot.com. Now, y'all should know that that's my website now. So Kim and I own all of Jack Miller's material along with Lonnie Scruggs' material. But that is a website where all Jack's material is. And he taught me a lot about notes and securing notes, whether you're buying the note or you're creating the note. I learned a lot from him. And the other one who's helped me a lot is Pete. Pete's done a lot of loans with his IRA, and going to his classes, I've learned how to do paperwork. But those were the three teachers for me to figure out how to do notes. And I'm not so much a note buyer. I'm a note creator, and I hold those notes. I know Donna Bauer has a really good course, and she's been teaching it forever about how to buy notes, how to buy non-performing and performing notes. And so I'd recommend Donna Bauer, and she's in Ohio. B-O, how do you spell Bauer? B-O?
B-A-U-E-R. I have heard of her. Yeah, I bought, long story short, didn't know enough about what I was doing and trusted the person who was doing it. And I nearly got burnt. The guy who did this deal, he has a pair of bracelets for the next 70 months, but got all involved in that, eventually got my money back, and helped a couple other people in the deal get their money back, but kind of want to know the due diligence and not make that mistake again.
Yeah, and that's why I don't buy other people's notes. Wait, hang on. Someone just asked me what the name of the website is. I want to put it back up there. I misspelled it. Anyway, I don't like buying other people's notes for the most part. It's just I've been so busy with what I do. I've not needed to look out, and that goes back to find the lane that you're comfortable in and stay in that lane. Don't just go do deals to go do deals because you get curious. If you find something that's working for you, make sure you master that and stay at it. So for me, it was always single family rentals. I added to that mobile homes and mobile home parks. But basically, I stayed as a landlord and learned how to structure deals so I can make those things cash flow and the importance of keeping those properties. And then once I was getting rid of some of my rentals, I learned how to do owner financing to sell them. So I still continue to get the check.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. We're coming up on time. Do we have any other questions? Okie dokie. Well, I hope y'all got out a lot. I really liked last night's meeting. I thought it was chock full of information. And as I said at the beginning of this call, you saw two different ways to how we're finding our deals, where Vina has a team working, and with Kim and me, it's just a mom and pop. If you weren't sure what I'm talking about right now, make sure you go back and watch this Q&A session, because that was good stuff. And just understand that Vina and I do things differently, but they're always in harmony with each other. And you just got to find, there's not a Vina, there's a Vina way and a Bill way, but there's no the way. You got to find your way, what works for you, which makes you feel comfortable. But whatever way that is, you've got to be out there talking to sellers. You got to be out there making offers. You got to be out there, making things happen, but you got to get those offers out there, because the number one thing I see, the number one reason why people fail is, I ask the question, how many written offers you made in the last 30 days? And the answer is 0. And I ask how many written offers you made in the last year? And the answer is less than 10. You will not succeed if you're not out being productive. I'm not talking about being busy. I'm talking about being productive. So Kim is out right now, and she's making written offers. And she was out yesterday and the day before because she really wants to buy a house in Venice, and she understands what this is going to take. So she's out there doing it right now because she wants to move from a motorhome into a house in Venice. So her drive, her reason why, is strong enough to make her go out and do what's needed. So anyway, thanks everybody for being on this call. Next Wednesday will be the last deal school before Ultimate. I hope a lot of you are signed up. We have about 25 rooms left. So if you're going to sign up, please sign up. I know on last night's call, I saw one woman who posted and she's looking for a female roommate to share a room with her. I can't remember her name and I wish I could, but love to see you at Ultimate. It will be worth every cent and every hour you spend there. And the contacts that you're going to make, the back and forth, the breakfasts and lunches and dinners, the financial friends you're going to make, because this is going to be people who go out and they're going to do deals. It's going to be well worth it to you. And I hope you take that time. And looking backwards on my career, one of the most important things I did, in addition to go out and making those offers, 25 a week, I would keep doing that no matter what, was I had 3 great teachers in Jack and Pete and Dykes. And I went to them to the tune of about 10 times a year, every year for more than 20 years. I still go to Dykes. I still go to Pete. You know, Jack passed in 2009, but find those good teachers, surround yourself with them, and go to them over and over and over again until you've mastered what it is you're doing. And you may be asking, you know, have I mastered Pete? And the answer is no. And I know I haven't, because the day I leave one of his seminars and I'm not taking 20 pages of notes, then I'm going to know I'm good enough where I don't need Pete anymore. But to this day, every time I go, there's 20 pages of notes I've written down, things to remember, things to recall, things I didn't know before. And it's always worth that time and effort. Love you guys. Everybody have a good afternoon. And you have, you know, I'm easy to reach. So make sure you give me a phone call if you have any questions. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.